So majority of my business last year came from expireds. I just literally all I have to do is focus on prospecting and everything else is taken care of for me. So, but I'm more systematic. I'm like, give me steps A through D and I'll follow them. What's your setup? What's your system? How are you calling them? How often are you calling them? I don't really do a lot of talking. I don't have to do a lot of talking. I just listen.
All right, guys, we have another amazing episode today. Personal friend, sponsor in EXP, but more importantly, this is someone who we look up to in the Phone Warrior community. In Phone Warriors Nation, I want to welcome Emily Brown.
Thank
Emily, welcome.
Yeah, well, I would look up to you guys. You guys are the ones that help me understand the power of prospecting and picking up the phone and making calls. So I have a lot of thanks to you both.
Yeah, so tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where you are located and where you serve.
Okay, so I am in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is in the center of the state, the capital. I've been in real estate for about 7, 8 years now. On a team with Tina Calls, most of you guys probably know. I sold over 62 units this past year, and
Wow.
closed about 32 million in volume. So the year prior to that, I think I closed maybe 50 to 52 homes. But what was big for me this past year was picking up the phone and making calls. So majority of my business last year came from expireds, circle prospecting. So I'd say 30%, 35% of my transactions came from cold calling, from prospecting. So
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So
So Emily, you're on a team, or you're on Tina's team, right? Tell us a little bit about that. Like at your level of production, your skill set, why stay on a team? Why even be in this world that you're in, as opposed to if you're doing expired circle prospecting,
Mhm.
at that level? Like, tell us a little bit about what's the value that you're seeing being on a team, and what would you suggest to someone who is considering being on a team or not on a team?
Yeah, I literally had a conversation with someone about this exact thing yesterday, and they were like, "Why are you on a team? You know, you kill it on the phone. You make a lot of cold calls. I know a lot of your business comes from expireds.
Hmm.
What is it about a team?" And the simple answer is it's just plug and play for me. I don't have to think about anything. We're the number one resale team in the area, so being aligned with a huge force like that is crucial in my business when I'm going on these appointments. It's just everything is there right for me at my fingertips. So I don't have to think about anything. And could I go out and do it on my own and start a team? Sure, I could. But I get so much value from Tina, a lot of coaching and mentorship from her, and then from the other agents on the team. So you could look at it both ways, but I just literally all I have to do is focus on prospecting and everything else is taken care of for me. So
Awesome.
wow. And what made you, knowing that you're on a team, you have leads, you have opportunity to, it sounds like, kind of putting that to the side a little bit and then deciding to pick up the phone and call expired? Like, was that scary for you? Were you scared to pick up the phone? Like, what gave you the courage to read a script and make these calls at a very high level?
yeah, I always tell people, I mean, it was back during COVID, I got burnt out from working with buyers. I was incredibly buyer heavy. I mean, our team is buyer heavy. We have a ton of buyer leads. I had gotten to a point where I was just exhausted. I was working, every single weekend, literally 9 to 5. I'd be gone all day long working with buyers. And I love working with buyers. And to this day, I still work with buyers. But I had gotten to that point where I knew if I really wanted to make big moves in my business, buy my time back, make more money, I had to learn how to pick up the phone and call. So I joined you guys, if you remember, 2.5 years ago. We started a small prospecting group, and it was just listening and learning from you guys, honestly, learning what to say and then building that momentum and that confidence. And then it's like once you start, you can't stop. So it took me a while to kind of get the hang of things and learn the scripts and the dialogue. And then once I got to that point and I had confidence in myself, that's when things just kind of started happening. So
I just curious about the comment. Like, how did you build the confidence? 'Cause I feel like a lot of people are not, you know, that's the main question they ask themselves, they ask us is, how do you build the confidence in order to make these phone calls? And how did you look within yourself to say, okay, I can actually do this at a high level? What was that thought process?
I think it was good because what would happen is when I first started prospecting, I'd get an appointment or two. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, okay, I'm the expired queen. I know I'm supposed to go on this appointment and convert them. I would fail. I wouldn't have the script. I wouldn't know what to say. I didn't know how to handle their objections, but I just kept doing it. I kept showing up. I'm like, eventually I'm going to get this. I'm going to, build the confidence. And when you do something over and over again, you learn from your failures. So each appointment I would take away something when I didn't get the listing. I'm like, okay, I could have done this better. I could practice this objection better. And so it just built on itself. And I think when I got that first win and I got that first expired listing agreement signed, that gave me the confidence to say, I know how to do this. I can do it again. And then it just kept,
So what would you say like your top 2 things are regarding mindset? Like, what do you look at? What if you had if you give any advice to agents? We have a lot of young agents in the Phone Warriors community that we're going to listen to this on YouTube, obviously. And, it seems like the struggle and the challenges around mindset around this. You had a great mindset, obviously calling expireds, but what 2 things would you say around that? That you would give and offer advice to?
I think when you're in the trenches making the call, don't be tied to the outcome. I was talking to a friend of mine that just started prospecting, and she's like, I'm so nervous when I'm making these calls because I feel like I'm not going to say the right thing. And then I start stumbling, and then I lose confidence in myself. And then she's like, and then I just don't want to do it anymore. And so she's got this negative mindset around prospecting. So I told her, I'm like, it's okay. You can fail. You can mess up. They're not going to remember you. You could probably call them back in 2 hours and try again, and they won't know it was you. So I think you just have to, it goes back to the confidence. Once you've established the confidence, then I think your mindset can get in the right spot. But I don't know if that really answers your question, but.
No, it does. I mean, basically what I'm hearing is like not being tied to the outcome and just keep on the consistency of your actions on doing the actual thing of prospecting and looking for those opportunities. Would you say that is it fair to say then that what you were looking at before in terms of like what shifted in your mind then for you to go from buyer heavy to then listing side focus? Like what was that shift for you that like it like triggered? I know you said the expired contract you got signed, obviously, but really what was it over time? Because you've been doing this for like over 2 years consistently. So this isn't like a new thing anymore.
For me, it was going through the physical and emotional pain of being exhausted and not having time to do anything other than servicing buyers. And that was back in COVID when it was a completely different market and homes were selling 100,000 over and we were all running around like crazy. But I went through that period and I'm like, I'm either getting out of real estate and I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to learn how to take listings because my time is valuable and I want to be able to dictate, when I'm working. And so now I can set my appointments when it makes sense for me versus feeling like I have to be out showing houses all weekend long to a buyer. So for me, it was going through a little bit of pain to understand that I need to make a change in my business if I want to A, increase my income, and B, buy my time back. So that was my personal story as far as why I decided to pick up the phone and call expireds. So.
Well, how many years were you in the business for you to get that feeling of like, hey, listen, like I'm selling 30 or 40, even 50 houses, but I want to get out of the business because I'm too buyer heavy. Like what did that look like? Like you sounds like you were doing a tremendous amount of business and you were getting clients and you had clients, but why would you decide that like, hey, if I can't take seller listings and I can only work with buyers, why would you want to get out of the business then? It's a weird question, but it's just to be
listings
at a high level to want to be out.
Yeah. I mean, I took listings. I still had sellers, of course, that I worked with. Sometimes they were byproducts of the buyers, but I don't know. I mean, I think for me, I felt like I didn't have the confidence in myself to know how to take listings at a high level. I took them because they would just come to me, or it was a referral, or it was a team lead, but I didn't know how to scale it and how to duplicate it and how to pick up the phone and talk to people. And I knew I had to learn I knew I needed to develop that skill set, scripting, dialogues, talking to people, having confidence to be able to transition out of the buyer deals and into the listing deals. And I still work with buyers to this day, but it's maybe 10 or 15% of my business. And most of the buyers are just byproducts of sellers. So it's people that have to buy because they sold their home. So,
I think, Emily, one of the things that I look at to you is you're also your work ethic. You taking the pain and those bullets during those time mentally to make that transition as a listing agent and go that route to, this is the only choice. Basically, what I'm hearing you say is you burned the boats a little bit, or to some extent, and you didn't have like a plan B. You just said, I'm either out of the business or I'm going to become a top listing agent. What do I have to do? And you did it. So, but your work ethic obviously followed that. So where would you say you got your work ethic from? Was it something you were born with? Was it something, how did this come about? Like your just like drivenness?
I don't know if it's, I mean, yes, I have work ethic, but I'm more systematic. I'm like, give me steps A through D and I'll follow them. I'm not the creative person that's, gonna, come in with my own systems and processes and figure it out. If you can tell me, like the Mike Ferry system, for example, what to say, when to call people, what systems I need to use, if you can give me all the information and put it in front of me, I'll do it. Because that's just, I'm very analytical and I'm just system oriented, and I like results. And so when I know I can like literally take my pen and check it off the list, okay, I've got this, I've got that, I've got my schedule, I've got my dialer. That's the best way for me to work. So, I mean, I've always had a strong work ethic. I think just growing up, I think I've shared this with you guys. I've struggled in school. So I had to work 10 times harder than the average, kid in my class to make a C on the test. So I think having that background has helped me. But more or less, I think it's just when you give me the systems, you give me the steps, you give me the processes, I know how to execute because I want to get to the end result. So that's just kind of my personality.
All right. Well, listen, I did not know that. I think those make the best real estate agents because I was not good in school either. So, and I was always that kid that just barely made it by somehow, some way. So I could definitely appreciate that. I heard that you've been talking a lot about systems and stuff like that. But one question that I think that a lot of people who want to start prospecting who have yet to do it, I do get these questions personally a lot. It's just a lot of DMs, which is, what do you do? Do you dial by hand? Do you use a dialer? Like what's your trick, right? So what do you specifically do? Like how do you get such a good pickup rate and being able to call a lot of people in general? Are you calling them more than once? Are you using a dollar system? What does that look like for you to get such a good contact ratio?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I utilize a dialer. I just do a single line dialer, but I don't like to use a headset. I just have my phone and I usually have them on speaker. And then when I get somebody, I'll talk with them because I feel like they can hear me better than when I'm on my Bluetooth or when I'm on, a headset. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. I don't complicate it. I know some people are calling 3, 4, 5 numbers at a time, but I'm just one and done. So call it. I don't get it. Sometimes I'll call back 2 times. Sometimes I'll call back 3 times, depending on the listing if I feel like it's a good opportunity. I don't really have the perfect rhythm or routine as far as when I'm calling. I try to hit them up in the morning and then call them again in the afternoon and then again in the evening if I can, at least the new expireds. And then when I get somebody, if I don't get the appointment, then they go in my database. I text them my information. I send them a follow-up email and then they go into follow-up boss and then there's a task automatically assigned to them. So then I just continue to drip on them. And I think that's where a lot of my success has come from, is not necessarily on the first call and the first appointment. It's the follow-up. Because most agents, at least in my market, they're not following up with them. So I know if they're not ready right now, I'm not going to push too hard. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to contact you based on how the conversation went. I'm going to contact them in a week or 2 weeks or a month, depending on their particular scenario. So.
So that's interesting to me when you just said that, because I feel like we get a lot of what I hear is complaining about how there's such a lack of expireds and FSBOs, but really what we're talking about here is expireds. As an example, this is like a strong suit for you. What do you what would you say to someone who comes to you and says, Emily, I see you're closing and listing so many expired listings, but there's none in my market. What are you telling those people? What would you say to those agents?
I would ask what Rich just asked. I mean, what's your setup? What's your system? How are you calling them? How often are you calling them? I mean, most people are doing it once or twice. And that's why when you call on the first, like today, everybody's on the phones at 7:45, 8 o'clock. And it's like right now I set 2 appointments, but I mean, it was a struggle to get anybody on the phone because everybody's calling. But I know they're not going to keep calling tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So sometimes I find more gold in the older expireds. And when I say older, I mean like a week, not even that old. Because people usually put their phone on silent after they start seeing all these calls come in. They're like, screw it, I don't want to talk to these people. But then you call them a week from now, they're not getting those calls, and then they're gonna pick up the phone. So if there's any secret, that's what I've, at least for me in my market, that's what I've found is not always the fresh ones. It's the ones that have sat for a week.
Okay, so on that point though, because again, this is where I think a lot of people get tripped up, or agents in the phone warriors community get tripped up on, is that, okay, so what was it? How did you learn to then keep calling these older expireds, or like a week old, right? Like what made you think of it, like to just be like, you know what? All right, I called once, and like a lot of agents will call once. If they are not interested or whatever, they'll get off the call. What made you, and when did you make that transition to say, let me think deeper about this and go the distance with these expireds?
Yeah, I think I just did what everyone else did. I'm like, I'm going to call the new expireds. You don't get the response and the reaction you're hoping for. No one's answering. So what's the next option? Give up, or well, let me hunt a little harder, and let me go through the older list and see if I can get some responses there. So it wasn't really just kind of a natural thought for me, at least. I mean,
it sounds like common sense to you. It was just like, hey, this is like, if I'm not getting them, but like, why wouldn't you call FSBOs or maybe circle prospect more, right? There's a lot of sources out there.
Plugged in, and I should call. I've never called. I've probably called. I can count on one hand how many FSBOs I've called. I just don't call FSBOs. Circle prospecting, I'm starting to do a little bit more of, but I like expireds because they're ready to go. They're raising their hand. You've already seen that they want to sell their home, and so it's just, I don't know. It's just something that I've plugged into that I really like. So
that's a great way to think about it. That they're raising their hand, right? So they already established that they're willing to sign a contract with a real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now our job to ask the appropriate questions, right?
Exactly. It's all about the questions. And in the South, people like to talk a lot. So I don't really do a lot of talking. I don't have to do a lot of talking. I just listen. And I think in listening, it's almost like a therapy session for them. They feel like they're being seen and heard. And then all I have to say is, well, when can we meet? I mean, literally, that's the appointment I set this morning. I don't even think I said anything about myself. It was just letting them talk and not interrupting them. They felt heard. And then psychologically, I'm like, there's something about this girl I like. It's just because I let you talk. And then, bam, I set the appointment and I'll get the listing signed. So
wow, that's a mic drop to me.
Salespeople.
That's a piece of advice I don't think people hear enough about. Listen more, right? That's awesome.
I've heard you talk about that a lot, Dean. You talk a lot about active listening, but it's so hard as salespeople. We just want to talk and prove ourselves, but you really don't have to do that. They want to be the talkers. You just have to listen, let them talk about themselves, and in doing so, that's how you win. That's the secret. If there is anyone. I don't handle objections. I don't say anything special on the phone. I just let them talk. I listen, and I interject, and I say a few things about myself and team if needed, and then that's really it. So I'm doing something a lot different, I know, than the other agents that are making the calls in my market. I know they're all going in there with their sales pitch. They're talking about themselves. They're talking over the sellers, and people don't want to hear that. I wouldn't. If I had my home on the market for 160 days, I don't want you coming in and telling me why you think you're so great. Where were you when my home was on the market? So
remind me, how long have you been in the business now for?
About 7 or 8 years.
So let's say 7.5 years, been in the business, right? If you could take a time machine back about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, you just got your license and you're hungry, you're ambitious, you want to conquer the world in real estate, and you're now, just picture yourself that you have one thing to say to yourself back then. From what you know now, what are you telling yourself back then? If you could take a time machine back to yourself and you have the full attention, like the Emily back then, like, what are you saying to yourself back then?
I think for me, I'm so scared to fail. And I think that when I think back to when I first started in real estate, I was terrified because I was worried that someone was going to ask me a question. I remember the first time I went to show a house, I got there like 30 minutes early because I was scared I wasn't going to be able to open the lockbox. So I think telling it's okay to fail, it's okay to mess up. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how much money you have, you're going to mess up. Accept the failure, learn from the failure, and know that you're just going to improve and get better and better. That, and then I wish I would have joined a group like this, a prospecting group, had other people that could support me and that I could learn from. Because when I first started, I was on my own and I was kind of on an island. I didn't know where to turn. So being able to plug into a high-level mastermind group or a prospecting group where I could listen to people like you guys that do this at a high level and know how to convert, that would have been imperative for me. I think I would have started succeeding years ago at a high level if I would have gotten over myself. So
absolutely. And my question would be for a lot of people that are new agents, experienced agents, right? Or even thinking about wanting to get their real estate license, what advice would you give to any real estate person of, I guess, your top 5 systems or top 3 systems that you would use that's very imperative for your success today? And that's, whether it's on your team system or it's your own personal system, but what are the top 3 to 5 systems you would tell, a newer agent or an experienced agent?
As far as actual systems, I mean, I think goes without saying you have to have some kind of a CRM or database to be able to plug in all the information, something to organize your leads. That's something too that I'm getting better at. Jeff's taught me how to use tasks and follow-up boss, which I never used before. So now I know to contact people. I've got reminders for myself every day, just like little things like that kind of you would think you would know to do. But having good systems in place, so having a CRM, obviously, if you're going to start making calls, having a dialer. But I think and this isn't really a system, but I think having a group or a network that you can plug into is probably the most important thing, not trying to figure it out on your own. So whether that's your brokerage, a team, a group like Phone Warriors, just plugging in and learning from people that have been doing this for a long time. I think that's really probably the most important thing, is not all the fancy tools and things you can purchase, but the collaboration from other agents, I think, is the number one thing.
I mean, I really don't have any more questions, Dean.
I mean, the only other question was really about like, how would you like to, like, if someone were to think about you down the road,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about legacy a little bit and that, what would you think is your legacy when it comes to like being in the business, or how do you want it to be, I guess, thought about in this way?
Yeah. And I feel like I'm almost 35, so I'm still early on in the business. So I think I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. Who knows? I might go out on my own one day. I love being on the team, but who knows? Maybe I'll start my own team. I've got a lot of goals and a lot of things that I want to do down the road. But I think just doing the right thing. What means the most to me is when I see a positive review left for me on Google or Zillow. That's what really makes me want to keep going and doing what I'm doing, is when I know that I've actually helped somebody. So I know that seems cliche, but money aside, it's when you know you've done the right thing and you know you made a difference in someone's life, especially going back to expireds. I think that's maybe why I like expired so much, is because a lot of these people feel like their home's not capable of selling, or they're the ugly duckling and it's just not meant to be for them to sell. Going in there and instilling hope in them and saying, yeah, it's possible. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to course correct. And then being able to see that through to the end, and then just the gratitude and appreciation that those people have. I think that means the most to me. And I think that's, if I want to be known for anything, it's making a difference and helping people, which I think a lot of people agree with that. I think you guys would both say the same thing, but
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you, Emily, for obviously doing this with us. What's the easiest way for people to find you?
Yep.
For referrals and anything down in the Raleigh area?
Sorry, what was that? Were you saying something, Rich?
I said, in what areas do you service?
Yeah, so I'm in the South. I'm not in the deep South. So Raleigh, North Carolina. And of course, you can find me on social media or through retail.
What is your tagline? Emily Brown?
Emily Brown Realtor. Yep.
All right. Perfect. That's it, guys. Any referrals down the Raleigh area? That's Emily Brown, hashtag at Emily Brown Realtor. There you go. Thank you, Emily. This has been great.
Thanks, Dina Rich. I appreciate you guys having me on.